Hello and a very warm welcome to the AviaDev Insight Africa monthly update podcast coming to you live on YouTube and on LinkedIn too. So thank you everybody who is joining us live today. I am your host, Jon Howell, CEO and founder of AviaDev Africa. A very warm welcome to getting some feedback on a different...
Yeah, that's me. I've got the YouTube playing on my phone, so I'm turning that off now.
Okay. Thank you. I thought it was me. Thank you, Sean. That's always good. This is live, guys. You know it's live, and we've got high level of production quality. So yeah, over the next 90 minutes or so, together with my guests, we're going to reflect on what's been a very busy month in the aviation world, actually, and all of the impacts that we've had in July and over the last few weeks. Now, the regular podcast, some of you have noticed, is in hiatus. It's only for the summer period. You just need a little bit of a break. We're having some holidays. We're having some different bits and bobs going on. But we wanted to continue with the monthly connectivity update because, of course, the news never sleeps. And who better to go through it with than my two partners in crime every single month, the men who live for aviation news and developments. First, of course, the human flight radar himself, Behramjee Ghadially, who is joining us from Cameroon today. If an airline so much as sneezes as schedule change, Behramjee's already caught a cold. He's got an opinion. So welcome to the podcast, Behramjee. Good to see you. Hope your internet is good today.
Let's see. Thank you.
Let's see. I love it. I love the confidence. That's excellent. And alongside him, a man who has the battle scars from starting up, running airlines across the continent, and also the battle scars from being now a media commentator. I'm not sure which is worse. And that is the one and only Shawn Mendis. So, Shawn, great to have you back. I did just mute you, actually, because I was getting a little bit of feedback at your end. So hopefully that has gone now. But yeah, good to have you back, mate.
No, it's back.
Thank you very much.
So, as always, before we start, I obviously have to say the opinions of my guests are their own, do not necessarily represent those of AviaDev. And if you're watching the live stream, get your comments and questions in. So on YouTube or on LinkedIn, we'll actually be able to see them. We can respond to them in real time. Obviously, if you are watching the follow-up and the recording, just get in touch with us directly. You know where we are, and obviously any ideas for future episodes.
Or comment in the comments on YouTube because we read the comments on YouTube and we can respond there as well. So
absolutely right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get into the AviaDev connectivity update for sort of July and the first week of August. Right, let's start in Farnborough, start in the UK, which is unusual for our podcast, but Farnborough Air Show. Uganda Airlines formally placed an order with Boeing for 4 737-8s and 4 787-9s. We talked about this, obviously, on the podcast last time, so there isn't anything massively new there. But, of course, it became a firm order, and this is the carrier's first ever direct Boeing order. They're picking up, they've got Airbus, they've got, or had Bombardier, now they've got Boeing as well. It's happening, Shawn. Anything else that we need to know? Any news on the delivery timelines when we can expect the planes to be in service?
Well, Vincent at the East African in Nairobi actually had a very good article about this, and it goes into a lot of different things. It goes into how the financing is in there. There's supposedly a U.S. government financing component to this, whether it's going to be through EXIM or military support or whatever. We're not quite sure. Obviously, they're not commenting on it. And supposedly the deliveries are scheduled for 2032 and 33. So we're still talking 6 years down the line for this. Again, that's longer than the airline has actually been around pretty much. So we're really... they're really being optimistic that they're still going to be there to take delivery of this. But my understanding, again, from other comments that Ato Girma has made elsewhere, is that they will seek to get shorter term solutions to cover until those deliveries start coming into place. But the key thing to that is 4+4 is confirmed on the books, officially announced, all good over there. I'm seeing user something or the other has just asked, what about the 2 new cities that Uganda Airlines is going to start serving, and which are they? I'll tell you right now that as per my sources, one of them is going to be Accra, which is going to be replacing Abuja as a tag from Lagos. That was supposed to have been announced last week, supposedly, but it will, in all likelihood, be announced this week now. So we are awaiting the formal announcement, and we see where that goes. But as it stands, they are just flying with one A330. The second A330 is still AOG since January. They have issues with Rolls-Royce and their ability to get the aircraft back in the air. So as it currently stands, there's no other utility they have available to put that 330 in. It's flying 3 times a week to London, twice a week to Mumbai, and there's not much hole in the schedule for that. When they go back to their 4+3, which is what their original schedule had been. So yeah, let's see how that goes for them, but it's just an update. In addition to that, by the way, there's also 2 freighters, because remember the original MOU is for 10. Etihad knew the 2 freighters will be pre-owned, so obviously they're not being covered by this particular deal. They will come from some sort of a market transaction. I think it's a 1767 freighter and 1737-800 freighter. And no particular word on those, but the US Exim is not going to fund a pre-owned aircraft.
Okay, cool. Right. So while we're on the subject of Farnborough, because we discussed the ins and outs a little bit of the Uganda Airlines, but there was a rumor that we were hoping to hear that a certain large East African carrier was going to put in an order for something, and we were hoping to hear about this at Farnborough. Now there was some updates even this week, so I'd like to bring you in, Behramjee, on the Boeing MAX 7 and what potentially we're thinking could happen here with regards to Ethiopian Airlines and their choice of their kind of regional or smaller narrow body aircraft that they're looking to add to the fleet.
Well, for Ethiopian Airlines to begin with, the good news is that Boeing has finally officially been certified to sell the MAX 7 properly to customers, in the sense that deliveries can be done from next year onwards. And the FAA, yesterday Sean sent an article to us saying that the FAA has now certified the aircraft fully. So yeah, the FAA certified the airplane yesterday. So
We have lost Behramjee. Sean, you're going to have to pick it up.
Yeah, so I think what Behramjee was saying is he's been itching for Ethiopian to place an order for the MAX 7, and he was hoping that it would come simultaneously with the FAA's announcement of the certification. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, I don't think that was going to happen immediately. If it had happened before Farnborough, we'd probably have seen the order there. I think from Ethiopia's perspective, Ato Mesfen has been very clear on and off the record that the main reason they've deferred a decision on the replacement for their Dash 8 fleet has been that they were not confident in the PW GTF engines from Pratt & Whitney. And since both the contenders, the Embraer E2195 as well as the Airbus 220, use those engines, they wanted to wait and see. Now they've got an option in that same category of the MAX 7, which has the benefit of, number one, not being a Pratt & Whitney GTF-powered aircraft. So obviously that takes that part out of the equation. It brings them significant commonality in both engines and training, because they have a huge fleet of MAXs already for them and their satellite airlines. So, I think the only thing that could change this, I've always maintained this is not going to be as much a case of which aircraft is best. I think all the aircraft are very good aircraft, and all of them will give them very good performance depending on the different mission profiles selected. However, the key to this is going to be the financing packages available. So we've seen the US has been very aggressive in Uganda in terms of their ability to offer financing to Uganda Airlines over there. The US is also very keen right now, from media reports, to have US contractors involved in the Bishoftu Airport project. And I would not be surprised to see some sort of a financing package linked to that, which may push Boeing over the line. But as an alternative to that, we know that Brazil has been really aggressive in terms of offering finance to its BRICS partner, Ethiopia. So I'm sure Embraer is making a very strong thing. And of course, Canada is very, very keen to offer export credits for the Airbus 220, given that that's manufactured in Montreal at Mirabel. So, when you look at this, I think Ethiopia is very fortunate to be in a position where they've got 3 good products and potentially 3 very good sources of financing available to them. So I think the financing will wind up pushing one or the other over the line. And geopolitically, if the US comes to the table with a blank checkbook, I think they are more than likely to prevail, given all the other aspects of the GTF and Ethiopia's current commitment to the MAX program.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, I was the MC at the IATA Focus Africa event in Addis, and the group CEO of Embraer was there. Now, I'm sure he wasn't just there for the IATA event, right? It was also an opportunity to really show willing towards the airline too. So that was quite interesting. I love what you talk about with the airport, because of course they need the financing. And if that can be tied in, that the US says, hey, look, we're going to help you with the airport. And, they've already got the office there. They've just, there's other things going on in the market as well. I think that's super, super interesting too. The thing that I was going to ask you though, Sean, is what about delivery timelines for these aircraft? Because surely that's got to have an impact, because they've got to plan their network. So isn't the E2 at the moment the shortest delivery timeline, or would that not play into it to say, actually, we need the aircraft as soon as possible?
Definitely, the E2 is the shortest window in terms of delivery timelines. In fact, we'll be discussing some E2 deliveries later in the show today. But no, I think the ET has a significant order book already for MAXs with Boeing, so I think it would be straightforward enough for them if they wanted the MAX 7s accelerated to swap a MAX 7 in for a MAX 8 currently, in ET's slot and take it from there. I'm not sure how many MAX 7s they have white-tailed, already pretty much manufactured and just waiting for final certifications prior to delivery. I know they still have some MAX 8s sitting in the white-tails, so not quite sure what the story with that is. But, as we've seen from Uganda, we're looking into 2030s at a minimum in terms of new slots coming available. But given ET's order book, some shuffling of slots may be possible.
Okay, that's really, good to hear, but I just think it's a really important thing. If that's the joker in the pack that Embraer has got, is, well, when do you want these, and can we get them to you before? That must be something that they're pushing as a USP, I suppose. Behramjee is back, and he has his hand in the air. I'm sorry we lost you there, Behramjee, but you are well and truly back. So
I
know you didn't hear what we said, but I muted him because somebody was chatting to him in the background. But yeah, over to you.
Yes, couple of things. Ethiopian also, with Boeing's help, could also negotiate with Southwest Airlines regarding their MAX 7 delivery slots in case Southwest Airlines wants to delay or defer a couple of deliveries, which can then be sent across to Ethiopian. Secondly, I do think that the MAX 7 would probably be the favorite to replace their Q400s and be their smallest narrow-body aircraft going forward because of the fleet commonality aspect. Though I remember Sean mentioned in our last podcast that the A220 is also heavily favored because of some financial credits and incentives being offered from Europe. Unfortunately, though, we've not heard anything concrete regarding Embraer having a high chance of winning this order. But who knows, we might be surprised. But if I was a betting man, I would probably put my money on the MAX 7 winning this deal versus the other 2 aircraft types. Purely because of the fleet commonality aspect.
Yeah. I think definitely. I think after the certification of the MAX 7 has come in, and given the fact that this has dragged on so long, the smart money would have to be on Boeing to win this. But, as I said, maybe 60% Boeing, 20% each for Airbus and Embraer on this. But I think Boeing's definitely in the driving seat.
But I have a question for Sean, though. Do you see the MAX 10 having any place in Ethiopian's fleet in the future with the new airport?
Don't know. The MAX 10 is effectively a 757 performer, and Ichi used the 757 as a narrow body alternative for short field performance against the 767 wide body. Looking at where they operated that, they've largely put the MAX into that hole for the most part, and that's giving them the MAX 8 currently. It's giving them slightly lower capacity, but slightly better performance in terms of, well, not necessarily better, but in terms of where they're deploying it, slightly more range and things as such. So it could be of interest to them. I think once you're committed to the MAX family, 7, 8, 9, 10, is interchangeable. Ichi loves the flexibility. They happily go in for different variants of the same type because of the commonality involved. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think it's something that's really pressing for them. I think when they bring in the smallest narrow body, I think that'll be their main focus in terms of removing the Dash 8s and then giving them the ability to hit. Obviously, the domestic network will get a lot of these, but it'll give them the ability to increase frequencies in a lot of the markets where they're able to. Remember, this is still an airline which is stuck at 2 daily frequencies to Nairobi because of geopolitical reasons rather than because the lack of demand is there. So it's a tricky situation for them in terms of what they can deploy to now, because I think they're coming up against a wall in terms of where they can actually go to that these aircraft can be deployed to, because the demand for the markets they're already in is growing and growing and growing, and they're getting additional frequencies, larger aircraft, etc. But at some point, it is finite. There is only X number of airports.
Let's come back to ET because there are only a couple of topics down the line, and they've got lots of developments, and obviously their numbers came out and everything else, and
I have all of that noted
right
down.
Good. Well, we got 19 topics. We're only just done number 2, so we need to crack on. So really interesting one from the last couple of weeks and the last few weeks has been all these images of the Etihad Roadshow charging around Africa, signing partnerships, which is great. So 3 deals in a month, an interline with Fastjet Zimbabwe. They're obviously going to launch Harare. An interline with Air Peace signed in Lagos on 22nd of July. That's about another 20 destinations. And then an MOU with AWA in Accra, which is codeshare cargo loyalty. It's kind of a bit bigger, I think, is it? And I'd like your sort of thoughts on this. Now, we know Etihad is going to have 6 new routes from November. They're doing all of this. My question is, what's behind it, and should we expect any more? I'm sure you're a big advocate of this, and let's start with you, Sean, because you obviously had some good chats with Urian at AviaDev in June as well, and all of this probably isn't a massive surprise.
It's not a surprise. I mean, we know very clearly, and it's Etihad's playbook. If they're going into a market, they need to partner with the local partner to get some sort of feed. And if you're looking at the 3 markets that they're entering, the only real options they have in terms of an IOSA certified ICH clearance, member, META, etc., who they can do this kind of thing with is Fastjet, Air Peace, and AWA. So the choice of partners is completely unsurprising. The scope of the partnerships is completely unsurprising. Keep in mind that Etihad already has a growing partnership with Ethiopians. So, that started off just as a signed thing. Then it went into a couple of code shares. They've expanded the number of code share destinations. They have a loyalty program cooperation right now. In fact, I was just looking at using some Etihad miles for an Ethiopian flight. So they've got, it's a wide range of stuff that is happening in that front. So obviously, their Congo routes will presumably be interlining with Air Congo, which is the Ethiopian partner. Now, I think Behramjee's got some theories in terms of how Ethiopian is proactively defending some of these markets against a potential Etihad entry. And I think that'll be interesting when we start talking about Ethiopian. But yeah, I think from the Etihad side, it is an aggressive expansion they are making, but they have a very long lead time. They've got till March next year. So they've got enough time to put all these building blocks in place and to start things off on the right foot before the flights start. And I think that's interesting. But I think just a little shout out over here, because I will send this link to him. I think one of the key things that they're looking at with the Air Peace partnership is to interline with their flights to the Caribbean. And, I think routing people to Barbados via Lagos between Etihad and Airpeace might be something. I know at least one person who flew that in the last week. They shall remain nameless, but they do listen to this podcast when I send them the link. So shout out to you, person.
All right, Behramjee, give us your thoughts.
Which fool was that?
I'm not going to comment here.
Okay. Anyways, like Sean said, the interline agreements that they did was logical and sensible. The only comment I have regarding those, the interline with AWA and with Airpeace, is that due to Etihad's flight schedule, passengers who are flying from other cities in Nigeria and Ghana, except maybe not from Kumasi, but definitely from other cities in Nigeria, they'll have to spend the night in Lagos to connect with Etihad the next day. So that would be a turn-off for sure, especially for Abuja passengers. Abuja passengers will not fly via Lagos to connect with Etihad to go to another city because they have options from their hometown airport. But from the other cities, due to lack of limited options from Enugu, Port Harcourt, you have Qatar Airways and and a few other carriers. But from Enugu, Calabar, Owerri, that's where Etihad will probably get bits and pieces of passengers who will be flying via Lagos. The same thing from Ghana, apart from Kumasi, which would have an early morning arrival into Accra. There's no other station that has that convenient connection. So passengers also from other West African cities would have to spend the night in Accra in a hotel and then go onwards. So that will be a challenge, but it's not going to be that much of a issue, as Africans are used to all of this, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wait and see, and let's keep an eye on that. But it's good.
But I didn't know Fastjet does interline. I didn't know Fastjet did interline until this. That's a purely low cost.
No. Why is it? Okay, I'm going to say this over here. I'm going to say this over here. This is Julian, exactly. I asked Julian, I asked Donahue as well. Julian gave me the response. Donahue ignored me.
Yeah.
Are they actually a low-cost carrier, and why do they get classified as that? And they are very upset. They say they are a value carrier. They reevaluated their business model 7 years ago and made a decision that the low-cost space with Embraer 145s was simply not working. So they've decided to reorient themselves into a value carrier. So, I mean, if you fly Fastjet, you get free luggage, you get free snacks, you get all. That's not a low-cost carrier. The irony, though, is when you look in terms of how these airlines are classified, and I'll tell you, OAG does this. Fastjet is still classified as a low-cost carrier, but FlySafair is classified as a full-service carrier. And I just do not understand this. Why and how people make these classifications is whatever.
Are they on the GDS, Sean?
Yes.
Fastjet?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So let me jump
They're
in
on
here.
GDS, and they also have distribution through Hanair. So they've got double, I don't know which GDSs they're participating, but the ones they're not participating, they've got an H1 code.
Yeah, right. So just from my side, obviously, you all know the story that I was involved with Fastjet right at the beginning, just in terms of they came to some events that I put on, and I very foolishly invested.
You were a shareholder.
I was a shareholder for a period of time.
I did not know all of this.
Okay, you didn't know about this, Behramjee.
Oh, he lost his shirt.
I lost everything. But and Julian likes to talk about this. He was not involved at that point. But the idea, the whole concept, and if you want to do the research here, it's fascinating. But it came out of a team from EasyJet management based out of Gatwick running this airline. Mm-hmm. And of course, when it opened and when it came into the market, the fanfare was, we are going to be low cost. We're going to be this. And as Sean says, it's been years since they reevaluated, got out of Tanzania, which is where they started, and now are in Zimbabwe, etc. It's been a long time, but that moniker has kind of stuck. Now, the other thing about calling yourself a value carrier, value is kind of in your control. Low cost, I hate the term anyway, because often most costs are not in your control as a carrier, right? So how can you have a low cost airline in a high cost environment? It's always the question that I ask. Value is a little bit more where you can say, our cost base is what it is, but we're going to provide value based benchmarked against the costs. And that's the nuance. But I agree with you, Sean. You need to, OAG have got to update that for FlySafair. They've got to update it for Fastjet as well, and we'll come to Fastjet because they've obviously made a huge move with an aircraft in the last week, and we've got a really cool story about that as well. So we'll come back to that. But I want to now stay with you, Sean, because we're going to talk about AWA. We've talked about this, or we've mooted it, about the aircraft that were going to come in and what they're going to do. So let's go to Ghana and let's go to Cote d'Ivoire, because AWA, Africa World Airlines, are going to launch Abidjan from the 31st of August and get their West African network into this particular market. Timely, given the Etihad MOU, we just talked about it. Potentially this could work out quite well. And there's the feed via Accra. So you tell me, how do you see this? Bit of a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer because it's actually restarting a route that we launched on 14th of February 2020 and then lasted all of 4 weeks before COVID hit, and it went the way of the dodo bird. So certainly, I think this is something that's been overdue. I'm not entirely convinced that with the schedule where they're effectively going head-to-head with Emirates 4 times a week, where they're going to be competing with an ERJ against Emirates' 777-300ER pretty much just like an hour apart. I've raised my queries on this with them. When we started it with AWA in 2020, we took a specific decision to avoid that, to avoid trying to go head-to-head with Emirates, because you cannot.
I got her WhatsApp.
They will have a lower CASK than you in terms of the unit costs for being able to beat you with 300 plus seats relative to your 50, and they will beat you on frequency because they're flying it daily, and also they do not care what price they sell it at. They can just throw the seats away because they're making their money on the long haul bits. So with AWA, our initial thing in 2020 had been we were doing overnights. We would do the last flight of the night from Accra to Abidjan, and then the first flight of the morning from Abidjan to Accra, and that provided best connectivity to the network. Now, AWA is in a different position. They've got different resource constraints and so forth, so that's not something that necessarily we're able to do. But as I've told them, I think they've got the schedule they've chosen is suboptimal, and it will not help them make a big bang immediately to achieve that. To achieve that 4 weekly ERJs going head to head with the daily 777-300, plus South African Airways 3 times a week, plus even Air Cote d'Ivoire's operations. Yeah, that's a crowded market, and while it's a market of about 70,000+, I believe, it'll take a while for them to make this. So certainly, it's a good move. They have to make these kind of moves. They want to expand. They have to make these kind of moves if they're going to be attractive to interline partners and so forth. But, how you do it sometimes is also important. And this is not going to be a nominee for Route of the Year like their Ouagadougou was last year, I think. I think this one is middle of the pack, middle or slightly lower of the pack rather than something there. But it's not a head scratcher. I mean, it's the logical move.
Yeah. And I suppose cautionary tale, just to put it out there, like the Lusaka-Harare thing that Fastjet tried, but they were competing with these Middle Eastern carriers that were obviously had the route economics and they had the long haul.
Lusaka-Harare. Kind of no, not quite. Lusaka-Harare, I believe, has 11 Fifth Freedom carriers, wow. Including both Emirates and Qatar. So, they've got Ethiopian, Air Tanzania, Kenya, Botswana. The works. 11 carriers. So, it's a very different dynamic there. Eswatini.
This could be a really interesting topic for AviaDev, right? About how far do you go with the Fifth Freedom and, and all the rest of it. Is it actually stifling connectivity in Africa by
Absolutely.
giving it?
You know what? Give me that panel with Julian, with Namshla, and I'll give you a few other names, and we will definitely have that conversation because I think it's definitely out there. How open is too open?
Yeah, how open is too open, and maybe get some of the Middle East guys on there who say, hey, we're going to defend our position.
They don't care. They genuinely don't care. For them, this is a rounding error. So as far as the Emirates and Qatars go, if they didn't have it, they would still serve these markets, and they would serve the markets independently. This is just a top-up cash for them. It's not like Emirates' service to Harare is contingent upon the 50 passengers a day they get from Lusaka. No, that it's dependent on the 300 passengers they're getting to China and everywhere else.
And this is where the premise of the Yamoussoukro, right, and all of those things is you can do protectionism because you can favor,
But this is nothing to do with YD. YD very strictly covers African. Yeah, but my point here is
if you were to remove the freedom for the foreign carriers and keep it there for the African carriers, the market would maybe balance a little bit.
But but that's the thing. Every country, no matter whether they sign up to YD, does not preclude them from signing Fifth Freedom rights over to non-African carriers as well. To make it work between, say, Harare and Lusaka, a Fifth Freedom carrier needs to get its own government's designation, which you'd assume they would, but needs to get rights from both Harare, from Zimbabwe, as well as from Zambia. So it needs effectively 3 parties to come to the table and all say, yes, this is okay. Now, I'll tell you, for example, Emirates in Ghana. Emirates' bilateral air service agreement in Ghana allows Emirates unrestricted Fifth Freedom rights to any destination beyond Accra other than the United States.
Wow.
So they can fly anywhere they want as a tag from Accra, but not to North America. I believe it is to North America rather than just the United States. So Canada.
So we'll talk about this, but is that not kind of where AFCAT could really focus its attention to say?
No, but see, let's go back in time. Let's go back in time and see why that was signed. This was signed way back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and why it was signed was because Ghana Airways wanted Fifth Freedom rights from Beirut to Dubai. So at the time, Emirates was not even looking at West Africa, and it was Ghana who said, we want Fifth Freedom rights, and you know what, we'll give you that, because you're never going to come over here. So at the end of the day, there is a legacy to all of this. Ghana Airways wanted the rights. Ghana Airways got the rights between Beirut and Dubai. In fact, they have any intermediate point to Dubai if they want it. And but at the flip side, Emirates now has become the behemoth in the room, and Emirates is now taking advantage of that to Abidjan. So let's not look at it in terms of this is all a one-way street over there. It's the Africans who wanted to play the game of cards, then got dealt a bad hand of cards, and now have to fold. And so it goes both ways.
How would you unravel this? You'd have to take this to ICANN, and you'd have to like full on
No, you don't want to unravel it. You don't want to unravel it. The reality is you want an open market to do what's best. The consumers and everyone is there. If AWA partners with Emirates. Emirates, in reality, the use of a 777 to fly the Accra-Abidjan leg is a waste of their resources. It's poor on aircraft utilization. It's poor on engine cycles, gear cycles, everything else. What an African carrier needs to do is put themselves in a position to say, hey, Emirates, don't fly to Abidjan yourself, partner with us. We have a product that we can match you with, et cetera, and we become a more attractive way for you to serve that market. That is the way to do it, not by taking a better product and throwing it out, but rather by raising your standards to the point where you become attractive as an alternative to them running their own aircraft. And I think that is the key point over there. Now, AWA is not in a position to do that right now. Maybe in 10 years they will be. Maybe in 10 years, AWA will have 737s or 797s or whatever it's called to fly that route and partner with Emirates and whatever, and maybe then it will work. But, there's nothing wrong with saying this is not a space we can compete in, and that is not a space you can compete in. I mean, Emirates can't fly to Kumasi, so Emirates needs to partner with AWA to fly to Kumasi. Emirates needs to partner with someone to take passengers to Ouagadougou or, these smaller markets where nobody can serve. So let's not get overboard in terms of saying, Africa is only for Africans, because Africans want to go on business abroad as well. Let the best person win, but let it be a level playing field.
Yeah, I think this is great. It's really interesting as a topic because, of course, we're going to talk about Fastjet in a bit, about how they've upgauged to try and get the unit cost down to compete, right? So, it's about adapting to the market. And we saw that when we opened the Zim SA market, that it's now been flooded. And we've got another carrier we're going to talk about in a minute with a new route that's going to start between South Africa and Zimbabwe as well. So before we move on, Behramjee, your thoughts on AWA and Air Cote d'Ivoire, and what they're going to do to Abidjan. Anything additional to add here? Sorry, we went off at a bit of a tangent.
No, it's fine. It's not going to create anything different in the market. It's only 4 times a week, quick 50-minute flight. 68,588 passengers flew in the last year, point to point between the two cities. The yield is very high, about nearly $300 one way is the ticket. Emirates, as Sean mentioned, dominates this sector. They fly a daily 777-300. They give a generous baggage allowance also, so it's favored by traders and majority of the passengers. It's basically a route that AWA needs for its long-term growth, as well as to fuel its Accra hub growth in the future, because Abidjan feed they will rely on to feed Nigeria and Central Africa. So I do see this route in the future going up to a daily flight, as it will contribute a lot of network feed. But for the time being, it won't. It's not going to cause Emirates of Air Qatar to have any sleepless nights.
But you think long burner, it could
It's
work.
It's a long-term play. Yes.
Yeah.
It is a route you have to have in a network from Accra. It is the second largest regional network, regional market from Accra after Lagos. So you can't not have it.
All right. Makes sense. Right. Let me stay with you, Behramjee, and let's talk about Emirates and Ghana again. So Emirates cut their new frequencies to Ghana after, I think it was less than a week, right? So talk to us about that. 'Cause they added
3 days.
3 days. 3 days. Okay, there we go. So they added 4 new weekly frequencies from the 12th of July and then pretty much pulled them out very quickly. So what's the story here?
Well, I don't know the background of this story, but I assume it's probably because, number one, point-to-point demand to Dubai is not as high as it was originally prior to the war starting, and that constitutes a significant amount of Emirates' Accra passengers. And another thing is that Emirates only announced the frequency increase, giving the market about 4 to 5 weeks advance notice, which you should not do, realistically speaking. It looked as though it was purely done to curtail Etihad's momentum into the market, and they wanted to get a faster entry into increasing to double daily, which they were planning to do pre-COVID. But obviously, due to the current issues in the Middle East, in the GCC region in particular, the demand levels have still not reached what they expect internally, along with not having enough transit passengers to go via Dubai to feed these incremental flights. So I'm not surprised at all. For them to reinstate these flights, I would say the Iran war has to first completely end. And doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon in the next 1 or 2 months, despite what's been reported in the media and over the weekend. But say in a hypothetical scenario, the Iran war ends by end of September, let's say hypothetically. If Emirates has to reinstate these flights, they should reinstate it, giving the market at least 2 months advance notice to sell. No point doing it again with a 1 month advance notice. At least they should give it 2 months, and they should preferably start these incremental flights from December 1st, so that they can take advantage of the high season Christmas rush in at least in one direction. So if you start December 1st, that means you have to open for sale latest by October 1st. So that's what I would suggest.
Makes sense. Sean, anything to add?
Just to say that, remember, this is the second time Emirates has tried this. They tried it in 2018-19, and it fell flat on its face back then and was yanked before it even started. This time it did start and lasted 3 days. So, once bitten, twice shy. Third time, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I think they will think very long and hard before putting in additional frequencies to Accra quite yet. I think the next step you would see if they wanted additional capacity to Accra is probably delinking Accra Abidjan and tagging Abidjan with somewhere else. Maybe, delinking Dakar Conakry and tagging Abidjan Conakry, something like that. Maybe what they'd look at if they wanted additional capacity to Accra. But I think it's been fairly clear that the market for Accra is somewhere in between the 3/4 of an aircraft and 2 aircraft number. And so that 2 aircraft is just too much, while the 3/4 of the aircraft might be putting a bit more pressure on it at peak season. So tricky, and this is the challenge you have. When you have a fleet of only large wide bodies and your smallest aircraft is an A350-900, you're stuck because you can only do things in increments of 300.
Yeah. Great point. Absolutely. Right. Let's move on. Behramjee, I'm going to come back to you for our next one, which is the network machine, the relentless network machine that is Ethiopian Airlines. Crazy month of updates here. So much going on. So rather than me run through it, I'm going to hand over to you because you've got your little notepad there, I can see.
Yes.
And you're going to run through it, and then we'll get Sean's thoughts on it.
Sure. I will start with the interesting part, which is the bilaterals between Ethiopia and Maldives. It was recently signed a few days ago, and it's allowed Ethiopian Airlines to start flying to the Maldives. But the most interesting part is that the fifth freedom destinations that they've been given traffic rights to via the Maldives. Those include Australia, New Zealand, Jakarta, Bangkok, Colombo, Perth, Sydney, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur. Now, if you ask me honestly, I think that if Ethiopian wanted to start Maldives, they would get a lot of feed from Europe, no doubt. There's very little demand from Africa per se, but it'll definitely help their European load factor, especially in the low season. But I think in order for them to kill two birds with one stone, as well as to avoid paying the high fuel rates that Maldives airport is very well known for, unfortunately, they should look at combining Maldives with Colombo, because at least Colombo has number one, low fuel rates. Number two, Colombo has demand to Africa in bits and pieces, not too much, but it has demand to Kenya and South Africa and a few other places, as well as they can also get some incremental Colombo traffic from Europe and USA and Toronto in particular. So that's what I would do. A 788 is ideally sized to begin with. 3-4
You could do it with
times
the
a week.
max. You could do it with the max to start.
But on the way back, won't there be any payload restrictions?
Not at all. They're flying the max to Chennai. They're flying the max to Dhaka. They can do this. I mean,
No, but
Maldives is...
Dhaka is a big payload, no? Coming back.
Yeah, but I mean, this is 2 hours shorter than Dhaka.
Okay. Fair enough. So that's one thing. Second thing is that, which got announced just yesterday, Lagos has been increased to triple daily along with Accra from the onset of the winter schedule. Lagos will be
actually Lagos increases from 15 November and Accra increases from 1st December.
But the winter schedule. So Lagos is the double daily wide body, whilst and a daily 738, whilst Accra is a double daily narrow body and a daily wide body. Now, just my personal comments on this. Lagos, I feel, has the market demand to feed all of Ethiopian's flights nicely via the 3 hub wave banks. Accra, though, I think a triple daily flight is a bit too much, though it has network demand, but not as much as Lagos. So I foresee Accra maturing eventually into the triple daily service, but initially I see the demand and the seat factor for those Accra flights being much lower compared to Lagos. Then we also, Sean mentioned yesterday, he caught that Lubumbashi has been increased to a double daily service, which is also good because Lubumbashi is a market, it's a niche market for Ethiopian. And also the fact that this city actually has been showing to have rapidly increasing growth to Chengdu, Guangzhou, Dubai, Bombay, and Delhi in particular. And as Sean mentioned earlier, Ethiopian Airlines, I feel, is also targeting these markets not only to increase their aircraft utilization, but also to consolidate their market share to avoid any newcomers gaining any sort of foothold into their core markets, which over here is Etihad. But also the Lagos and Accra increases also to push away any attraction that Qatar Airways or Emirates would gain out of those markets, because eventually Emirates would be flying a double daily into Lagos in the future, not immediate future obviously, but in the near future. So Ethiopian is basically consolidating its presence where it can bilaterally, in my opinion.
And also don't forget, Ethiopian is Air Congo. So any increase to Lubumbashi is effectively servicing their home market as well.
The only concern I have for Lumbashi in the near term, not long term, near term, is that the travel restriction of people flying from Lumbashi to certain cities in Ethiopian's network, where you have a 21-day quarantine restriction. Not quarantine, but you cannot enter into certain cities for 21 days if you've been in the Congo. So that would help hurt their short term demand. Apart from that, they've also
It's
announced.
been problematic as well, even if you've just transited, because I remember there was a
Yes,
situation where
there was one
they
flight.
rerouted.
Yes,
Exactly. They
yes, yes, yes.
rerouted the Lilongwe flight, which was supposed to go Addis, Lubumbashi, Lilongwe, Addis. They rerouted it Addis, Lilongwe, Lubumbashi, Addis. And because that plane did a tech stop in Lubumbashi, the passengers couldn't go to the US or couldn't go to the UAE for 21 days
Yes,
because their
correct.
plane was rerouted to make a tech stop. So,
Right.
Ebola.
Apart from that, a few other network changes. Long haul, China, just for a couple of months, Chengdu has been increased from 4 to 6 times a week, 4 weekly 777 and 2 weekly 787. Chengdu has now become the new hotspot for African traders going there. Guangzhou, obviously, number one, but Chengdu is now rapidly becoming the second most favored city for Africans. So Ethiopian has increased it in the short term, just for 2 months. Guangzhou for the Canton Fair in October, they've increased it to a double daily operation, which usually happens in April and October in the past by ET. What Sean and I really liked, which Ethiopian announced in June, was the start of their Mauritius flights, and we knew that it would be a successful operation from the onset because of what's happening in the Middle East. So within no time, literally, they've upgraded their 3 weekly 737 MAX 8s to Mauritius to a 787-8, largely due to European demand and GCC demand they're getting from there on this route. And then one of Sean's favorite cities in Africa, for reasons best known to himself, is that they increased Port Sudan to 9 times a week from July with a 738. I just said that just to make him laugh because, yeah. So, yeah, as usual, some very, I would say, strategically positive network additions to the Ethiopian network from the onset of the winter season, as well as some in the summer. Majority should do well for them. It'll be interesting to see how they approach their Maldives route because they've increased utilization on Lagos and Accra for their aircraft. So let's see. It's nothing new. I expect more announcements from Ethiopian for the winter season as things get a bit more clearer. And yeah, I don't have anything more to say regarding that, though I'm still surprised that the Atlanta operation is going on because I expect that should be suspended for the winter season, hopefully, as well as that silly route Porto in Portugal also.
Well, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. That could be the surprise.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put that as exactly. I'm going to nominate that for best African route of the year.
Yeah,
But
why
anyway,
which
no,
route African of the year?
I'm kidding,
Port Sudan?
Behramjee. I'm kidding. Port Sudan already won it 2 years ago. I nominated it 2 years ago. Remember? But no,
Okay.
I think you've summarized most of the Ethiopian stuff well. I'm just going to add a little bit on the Mauritius thing. Remember, when Ethiopians started their Mauritius flights, they only had traffic rights granted till the end of September. And currently, they are only selling flights till the end of September. Now, I've had chats with people in Mauritius. I've had chats with people at Ethiopia. And my understanding is during the launch festivities, Lema, who is the chief commercial officer and likely next CEO at Ethiopian, was on the ground. Ethiopia has agreed to, Mauritius has agreed to conclude a BASA with Ethiopia. They've not had a BASA for eons, and despite Ethiopia wanting to get into that market. And they will, in the interim of concluding that BASA, they will grant them a permit extending beyond September. So my sources there say that the application for the permit to take them through to the end of 2026 is already submitted and is just awaiting approval before they'll reopen sales for that. That'll continue at 3 weekly until the end of 26. And then in all likelihood, there will be a BASA concluded, which will formalize a permanent year-round operation by Ethiopian. But right now, they're still working on ad hoc permit basis. And the current ad hoc permit is only valid till the end of September. Now, again, not knowing the actual dynamics, but judging by what I know of the dynamics over there, I can almost certainly say that Air Mauritius is having a cow over this. They do not want to see Ethiopian in that market. Ethiopian themselves are currently transporting about 70% of their traffic, maybe even more than that. It was 70% to begin with in pre-sales from Europe over Addis into there. A small remainder of that coming from the Middle East and so forth. But this is eating into Air Mauritius's bread and butter, and they will be jumping up and down complaining that you can't do this to us. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, what delays we see and so forth. I think it's good for Mauritius. It's good for Ethiopian that this is happening. I don't think Air Mauritius will like it. So we shall see.
No, I agree. They won't like it at all. I mean, I was there on holiday last month. It was very, very nice. And I flew with Discover, and it's a particularly German-centric leisure airline. It's really interesting to see Ethiopian getting to these leisure markets, but of course it's all about feed, like you say, Sean. All the flights from the UK, for example. They've got flights out of Gatwick, flights out of Heathrow. It's a direct straight line. Let's stop in Addis if it's going to be way cheaper, than the direct opportunity.
And here's an interesting thing. Just a comment on that Gatwick Heathrow thing, and this really struck me because I was looking at their schedule. Remember, in the summer schedule, Ethiopian slots at Heathrow are not all morning arrivals. They are twice a week. They actually have evening arrivals. So that's a daytime departure from Addis, evening arrival into Heathrow. So what they're actually doing is, on those days, they have a night departure to Gatwick, morning departure from Gatwick, and a morning departure to Heathrow, and an evening departure from Heathrow. So effectively, I think that is what we might wind up seeing in the long term, is the double daily Londons from Ethiopian, maybe split across Heathrow, Gatwick. I don't know how that might work. It'll depend on the slots. But I just saw that interesting when I was looking at the schedule, just as London from Addis, morning, evening, and morning, evening. There are no parallel operations on those days, and that's just interesting to see.
Yeah. Right, go on, Behramjee, really quick, though, because we've got 12 more to do.
I also feel that for Ethiopian to give more room to the Asian connections on their popular morning flight to Lagos, I feel they'll probably have a special fare using by flight number for London and Rome to feed their nighttime flight into Lagos. So this way, more seats can be opened up. They already
do. If you look in terms of that, even like in Mumbai, in the Mumbai market, if you want to fly on 641, that's the third bank flight which feeds Addis, you're always cheaper. They're actually the lower RBD fares are specific to 641, and in fact, others have valid only on 641, surcharge if you want to fly on 611. So this is something they're already doing, and which is why I love flying on 641 and just taking the overnight in Addis whenever I'm passing through. It always gives me opportunity to catch up with someone in Ethiopia or, do whatever. So Ethiopian has been doing that for eons.
I know they do that from Douala with their overnight flight, but I did not know for a particular OND. No, but I don't know for a particular OND like London to Lagos that they're currently doing that.
Yeah. They've been doing that because some of the London fares, for example, are specified, only valid from Gatwick, only valid from Heathrow, specific time. So it is very much, they segment their fares very, very specifically to push demand and to restrict demand. It's been happening for as long as I know. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Good. Right. Let's crack on. I think we got a couple of relatively quick ones. So we're going to stay in Addis, but actually not talk about Ethiopian Airlines because China Southern are adding some more capacity from Guangzhou and Changsha. I didn't even know Changsha until I looked at the IR.
Changsha is in Sichuan.
Sichuan, no, it's right? Okay. No, Hangzhou. No, I don't know. Somewhere. Sorry, Chinese
near Shanghai.
viewers.
Yeah.
So we're all going to be very upset with me. But obviously the Africa-China market, the Ethiopia-China market is there. Bit of competition on that corridor, but anything specific you want to say on this particular?
Two things. So Changsha is the capital of Hunan province. Changsha, the Hunan, Sichuan, Chengdu belt is where there's really a lot of growth happening from there. So without a doubt, I think the Hunan government is looking at where you're seeing the growth from Chengdu in particular, and they're looking at trying to incentivize. So without a doubt, this is, the routing is Gwangju, Changsha, Addis. Without a doubt, this is coming because of some sort of incentives being offered by Hunan government. So I'll tell you that much straight over there is why it's happening via Changsha. The second point over there is that this is China Southern. Now, let's keep in mind that China Southern and Qatar Airways are like this. In fact, what's a very interesting point, which I don't know if we mentioned it, but I had a chance to talk to Hendrik at Qatar about this during AviaDev. And one of the largest growing markets from Nigeria to China was actually China Southern's route into Doha, which then connected passengers on Qatar into Nigeria. And it was just interesting to see that it was an interline connection, but that interline connection was obviously being driven by Qatar's strategy for Africa. So anything that China Southern does with respect to Africa should be taken as Qatar has a hand in it, whether they're driving it or whether they are encouraging it or whether they say, that's a great idea, let's make it happen together. But those two are much closer linked than people think. And I think the numbers last year, as well as, obviously comments from them as well, have just highlighted that fact some more. So while it seems, Changsha to Addis on paper just seems, what the hell, there's more to it.
Okay. Interesting. Right. Let's do the second one. Go on, Behramjee. All right.
China Southern, they announced a 2-weekly operation using a 787-9 on this route. The Guangzhou to Addis market last year, it grew quite a bit. It grew from 45,000 passengers in 2024 to 71,000 passengers in 2025. But the average fare fell by about 20%, fell from not 20%, fell by 15%, sorry. Fell from $620 one way without YQ to $515 one way without YQ. Now, the difference over here is China Southern is competing against a 10-weekly Ethiopian operation. China Southern is not going after Africa market per se. They're going after China and Korea and Japan market via Guangzhou to Addis Ababa only. Ethiopian targets Africa to Guangzhou. So it's a completely different target market that China Southern is going after. It's a much, much smaller market. And also the fact that China Southern is operating one stop to Addis via this airport, Changsha. So it's not really a competitive product compared to Ethiopians. I do not see Ethiopian getting affected that much with this new entry. And I also will not be surprised if China Southern suspends this route within a year, because I really don't see much hope for them on this sector.
All right. Let's wait and see.
I see more hope if Air China started a Beijing to Addis Ababa flight, because they're Star Alliance members, and they could code-share with Ethiopian beyond Addis into Africa.
The only reason this is happening, Behramjee, is the Hunan government incentives out of Changsha. There is absolutely no other reason why anybody in their right mind, and even the Chinese, would launch Changsha to Addis Ababa. That is, as I said, it seems obscure, it seems crazy, but there is money behind it. And it's being rooted with, obviously, Gwangju behind it, because Gwangju is the hub, Gwangju's got the feed, and it's a straight-through flight. So.
Yeah, all right. Makes sense. Right, let me stay with you, Behramjee, for the next one. Pretty straightforward, I think. Turkish Airlines continuing
I have a lot
to
to
expand.
say on this.
Okay, continue to expand into South Africa.
Very interesting information I have.
So they are increasing Cape Town and Johannesburg from 7 to 10, respectively.
Yes.
So both of them. Massive capacity growth, pretty much, straightforward. But is it straightforward, Behramjee? Talk to us about demand, and they're obviously loving those cold waters down there.
Yes, indeed. Actually, I also have a very interesting question for you, John, on this.
Oh, anyways, not this again.
Yes,
I'm terrible at these.
This even Sean would not know, because even I did not know this until I did my research. Anyways, to begin with, as you mentioned, Turkish Airlines bilaterally has been awarded incremental frequencies into South Africa from the onset of this winter season. not only South Africa, but also other cities in their network like Pakistan, etc. They got extra bilateral rights for. But for South Africa, Joburg and Cape Town is now dedicated 10 times a week using an A350-900 exclusively, departing Istanbul at 2 in the morning as well as 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it allows both Asia and Europe to be connected via Istanbul in both directions. Though for Asia it might be a bit of a detour, but still, whatever extra incremental connections they get, good for them. And they arrive back into Istanbul at 5:30 in the morning, which connects with their early morning hub wave bank to USA and Europe, as well as 11:30 late morning, which connects to their afternoon hub wave bank to Europe and USA. Now, with regards to the Turkish's performance in the South African market year over year, you'll be surprised to know that they uplifted more passengers out of Cape Town than out of Joburg consistently over the last 2 years, despite Joburg being a much bigger market, but probably because Cape Town has less competition compared to Joburg, as well as
Cape Town has dedicated
capacity.
flights, while the Joburgs are tagged to Maputo and Durban.
But still, for Joburg, they uplifted in 2024 147,000 passengers, and that fell to 145,000 passengers in 2025. The interesting thing is that Turkish's Joburg route, only 14% of it is point to point, whilst 86% is transit traffic via Istanbul to Europe, USA, and the Middle East.
Middle East.
Middle East, but a lot of it goes to Beirut and Saudi Arabia, but their main markets are Europe, to be honest with you. The top 10 market, actually the number one market that feeds Turkish's Joburg flight, I'm sure all of our listeners would not guess it, is Athens. Athens is the biggest feeder into Johannesburg. But
There's
it is
a
not
huge
for
Greek
Cape
community.
Town.
There's a huge Greek community in Johannesburg.
But it is not for Cape Town. For Cape Town, it's shocking.
No, the community is in Johannesburg.
I know, but I'm just saying. So the top 10 markets that fed TK into Joburg last year were in ranking order: Athens, Amsterdam, Madrid, Frankfurt, Munich, Brussels, Berlin, London, Copenhagen, and Manchester, each respectively. Now, on the other hand, Cape Town to Istanbul, 181,000 passengers in 2024, which increased to 192,000 passengers in 2025. So a good about 7% increase in passengers, but only 10% of those passengers were point to point, whilst 90% were transit via Istanbul. Now, John, take a wild guess. Which market do you think was the biggest market by far feeding Cape Town's flights of Turkish Airlines?
So this is Cape Town outbound.
Yes, and I will give you a hint. It is not an ethnic market.
My goodness, it's not an ethnic market. Yeah. Wow.
No.
Okay. And Turkish. Let's go Stockholm.
No, interesting choice. Stockholm did not make it to the top 10 though also, but it was Berlin.
Berlin, okay.
Yeah, Berlin by far was number one. And number two was Athens. So there is a Greek community in Cape Town as well.
Not as large.
Because I don't see many Greek tourists going there. But yeah, so in ranking order for Cape Town is Berlin, Athens, Munich, London, Dublin, Hamburg, Frankfurt, Dusseldorf, Manchester, and Zurich. Notice at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 German cities out of the top 10 feeding Turkish's flights into Cape Town, which I'm not surprised considering the Germans' love for Cape Town in the winter season in particular, and as well as the number of frequencies that they have out of Germany.
Yeah, there's a lot, right, already. But are you saying there's scope for more, right? So like Lufthansa, Condor, let's do more.
Yeah. Turkish obviously must be aggressively pricing their flights into Cape Town from Germany, plus the 2 free baggage allowance on every single fare RBD, unlike Lufthansa, which offers a 1 free baggage only on certain low-level RBDs. That helps as well. So yeah, I definitely foresee Turkish benefiting with this because also, as we discussed in the podcast over the last 3-4 months, a lot of demand via the GCC is now being rerouted on either non-stop flights or via one-stop flights via Addis, Nairobi, or other European destinations, or Istanbul going to Joburg.
And
so that should help
Okay.
also.
No, this is really good. Just quick one on that, Sean, for you to answer
Yeah.
as well, because it might be obvious.
Because
But,
I've got a statistic for Behramjee as well, because I looked up
Right,
the exactly
please.
same numbers, and I've got one for him. But go
Please.
on.
Let me
Ask
just
me.
ask the question. So obviously you've got Lufthansa, you've got Condor, etc. So do you think Turkish are picking up a lot of leisure travelers who are a bit more like, hey, I'm willing to connect if the price
Absolutely,
is right?
absolutely.
It's nobody else. It's just leisure.
If
It's
you
price
fly
sensitive.
I've flown the Turkish out of South Africa into Istanbul and connecting onwards to India, but every time I do it, it's like European backpackers are 50% of the flight. So it is the low-end European travelers. And if you look at their yields, they're crap. I mean, their yields are...
So I guess my
garbage.
point is when Discover, for example, gets its 350-900s, then they could do this and pick up a lot of that point to point and be price sensitive and have the right product.
But Discover can only operate one gateway into South Africa with a wide body, while Turkish can operate, as Sabina just pointed out in the chat, 14 German destinations feeding into Istanbul, one stop into either Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. I mean, they've got 3 gateways in South Africa, Joburg, Durban, and Cape Town. They're blanketing it. But here's my interesting thing. We talked about the absolute numbers, but what was the fastest growing market between Cape Town and Europe? And once again, this is back to what I had mentioned earlier. John, what's your guess? Largest growing market from Cape Town to Europe? Well, Cape Town to anywhere in Turkish's network.
In Turkish's network, oh my God. Well, I would
Turkish's largest growth market.
Well, I would hope it would be some obscure German city like, let's go Dusseldorf. Oh, okay.
No, it's Moscow.
Wow.
Once again, this comes back to the whole Russian Antarctic survey in Cape Town over the winter and the humongous volume that is actually delivering to the economy in Cape Town and to passenger arrivals in Cape Town. I told you, when we looked at those tourism numbers and how Russia spiked completely between October and February every year, Russian numbers go through the roof in South Africa. They triple versus the northern summer period, and 80% of that happens in Cape Town, and 40% of that is arrivals from Antarctica. So this really just shows that they're coming from Russia, then they're flying onto Antarctica, flying back from Antarctica, and then flying back to Russia, mostly on Ethiopian and Turkish.
There we go. Right, cool. Okay, let's park this one because we're an hour and 10 minutes in and we've still got about 1,000 topics to go through. And the next one is super interesting because it is our friends at Air Zimbabwe and launching London Gatwick, which is super exciting for multiple reasons, but also very interesting in the way it's been put together. So Harare Gatwick returned in July. It was 14 years absent from the market. It, of course, as we've pointed out, those of you who follow us on LinkedIn, it was our top Africa to the rest of the world route since the start of the Airbus report 3 years ago. It's always been number one. This is a 3-weekly service on an A330 operated by Plus Ultra, Spanish carrier under ACMI. Which obviously, because Air Zimbabwe didn't have the aircraft, wasn't, was on the blacklist, all these different things. So it was a way of getting this route going. And we know the guys that helped with the ACMI as well. Sean has his hand over his mouth, his hand over his eyes. The aircraft
I have a lot to say.
Now flying. The route is now launched. So, and of course, very exciting for us. Air Zim, the team were there at AviaDev, the London Gatwick team were there. It was all already very much in discussion at that point. And there's been lots of negotiation, lots of things going on. But let me kick off with Sean. You go, Sean, this time.
Okay, sure.
Okay. We alluded to this in the past, but Air Zimbabwe has actually now announced, between our 2 podcasts, Air Zimbabwe announced, launched, has flown and has cancelled 2 flights as well between 2 podcasts, which I think really tells you why I'm covering my eyes and my head regarding a long-haul route. Launching a long-haul route in the summer with 2 weeks' notice is called financial suicide, and I think they're beginning to see that. We've seen numbers which they to their credit, are publicly releasing, for better or for worse, but their load factor over the first 2 weeks has been approximately 30%. And that 30% includes all the VIPs they flew there for free for the launch festivities. So the reality is they're probably in about a 20% load factor range. They're just lighting money on fire. I know they're going to say, oh, but this is not Air Zimbabwe's money. It's going to be Mutapa Investments' money. Look, if I was a Zimbabwean taxpayer, I really don't care who's sending my money on fire. I just care my money is being set on fire. But hey, there's a larger agenda at play, which I do appreciate. They're doing the right thing. They're doing it the wrong way. This market could be served, but this market needs to be served with a feeder network on the Zimbabwe. And now I believe they are going to be tagging a Johannesburg flight, returning to Johannesburg come September. I don't think they've got Lusaka on that. Harare to Lusaka, as we've alluded to before, has too much competition that Air Zimbabwe won't be able to really
CEO
make.
said he was wanting to tag it with Lusaka as the
He
Zambian
want to
government
tag it,
offered.
but that is not some.
So,
yeah, but it's not something that is actually happening in the immediate term planning, while Johannesburg is actually in the immediate term planning to get back into that market. And the reality is, look, Lusaka to London is not even a fraction of the market of Johannesburg to London. If you want to fill that plane, or even be competitive with filling that plane in the off season, there's only one market in Southern Africa, in Africa, two in Africa, Nigeria and South Africa, which you can count on for year-round infinite demand. And Air Zim's going to do it. But as it currently stands, they've had 2 flights delayed, 2 rotations, so 4 sectors delayed, 24 hours or more. They've had 30% load factors. They are, I do not want to be sitting in a financial person's shoes or standing in their shoes right now. They're easily blowing $3 to $4 million a month on this route alone. And that's money they do not have. So their shareholder Mutapa Investments is going to really have to come to the table with $30-40 million a year in subsidies to make this work, unless they significantly change they've just come back into GDS and things, but these are things which should have happened before the route launched. They came into GDS a week after they launched the route. I mean, come on, people. It's not just amateur hour. This is why African airlines get a bad name for being Mickey Mouse outfits. And even Mickey Mouse generates more money than that Jew's intellectual.
Right. Take a breath, Jon. Behramjee, over to
you. Sure. One thing which Sean forgot to mention is that also the Harare to Joburg point-to-point market is significantly huge. That will also help the A330 not only get transit traffic, but also point-to-point traffic on that.
Oh, but knowing them, they'll launch it with a bloody ATR.
Okay, anyways. Getting back to, apart from what Sean said, with regards to the actual commercial numbers on the Zimbabwe-London route, I was actually very happy to see this route getting announced and launched. Though obviously, we discussed it last time that the advance lead time was quite silly. Or I would say, in my language, quite stupid. 2 weeks notice. It makes even Air India look shameful, because Air India announced flights to Amsterdam and Sydney last year with 1 month's notice to the market. So Air Zimbabwe beat them in terms
double Air Zimbabwe's. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So, but anyways, apart from that, the market size between Zimbabwe and the UK last year is quite big, surprisingly, compared to what many people would think it is. Last year, it was 162, 185, 202,000 passengers flew point-to-point between Zimbabwe and England last year, out of which the Harare to London point-to-point market was 132,000. Manchester and Birmingham was 30,000. Whereas Victoria Falls to London by itself was 23,000 and Bulawayo 17,000. So the market demand is definitely there. But as Sean mentioned, as well as I mentioned in the last podcast, for Air Zimbabwe to see consistently high load factors on this route year-round, they need at least 4 to 5 regional cities via Harare connecting to this flight in both directions. not only Joburg, but places like Lusaka, Entebbe, Nairobi, whatever is close by within a 2-hour, 2.5-hour flying distance needs a connection. Because relying solely on...
Behramjee, let me just point this out. Air Zimbabwe currently has 0 of their own aircraft airworthy.
Correct.
They are reliant 100% on
I know.
ACMIs from everything else.
Yes.
So as it's a question of learn to walk before you can run. And I'll tell you this straight up. I know Edmund, I know his team. I know that they are not the type who jump into London. This is something that has been pushed on them by their shareholder. The announcement for this was made by Mutapa in January, saying it will happen by June. I mean, this is not something that is being driven by Air Zimbabwe on the basis of commercial sense. So once again, trying to attribute commercial logic to decisions that are very clearly not being made for commercial reasons, but rather political reasons, is wasting our time. We do this all the time. We look at things and try to say, well, this must be why they did it, when the reality is, it's not why they did it. They did it because they were told to, because their paymaster says, you're going to do this or else. And the or else was too bad to contemplate. So they did it. And that is the problem. That is the problem with Air Zimbabwe. That's the problem with Air Tanzania. It's the problem with all these bloody African airlines who do not follow commercial logic. And just when their political master says jump, they say how.
Yeah. What to do?
Absolutely.
You work for one. What the hell? I mean...
I tell you what to do. Let's move on and let's all talk about something different. Okay, so let's talk about another wet lease, which is Fastjet and Zimbabwe. Absolutely, you've really linked it all nicely to this time. So thank you for helping us with the topics there, Sean. So Fastjet Zimbabwe have added A320 capacity, wet lease from South Africa's Global Airways. So a big step up and a step change from the ERJ 145s. We talked about the route economics. ERJ 145 is brilliant on these thin routes, but you just can't compete with the Safairs of this world, with the 737-800s. And so they've got this A320. It's serving Victoria Falls from Johannesburg, and also will do Harare as well. To start with, unit cost play. Couple of things for those who didn't see my LinkedIn post. One is, I believe that a lot of the discussions were had during AviaDev, which is super cool. We do a VIP program ahead of the event, and both Cilias and Julian, the respective CCOs of the airlines, being Lyft through Global and being Fastjet with Julian, were on that tour, which is great to hear. And then, of course, the CEO of Fastjet was there. The global team was there as well. So a lot of these conversations, I'm sure, were happening, but they have given us a little bit of kudos there. And the second thing that's really cool that I noticed on the livery is that those of you who know Fastjet know that there is a grey parrot, has always been its sort of motif, and it says "Fly with Mbuji" on the side. And so I said, who's Mbuji? And then I got a beautiful photograph of the owner of Global, who owns a grey parrot called Mbuji. And so it's his parrot on the side of the Fastjet thing. So it just feels like a match made in heaven. It's a unit cost play. I'm sure of that, obviously to compete in this market that we've talked about a lot about its liberalization. But give us a little bit more, Sean, on exactly, how it came about, what you think this is going to be, because it's initially just in here as a tester, right? For a couple of months. It's not
2 months,
a long-term thing, right? It's 2 months to the way an ACMI is due to be used normally, adding capacity, test the market, whatever it may be.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think, look, it's something that I had this conversation with Julian at Fastjet, must have been 3-4 years ago when when the South Africa Zimbabwe market began to be liberalized. And I told him, you're going to be in a situation where the only way you can compete with what's going to be an influx of capacity using Embraer 145s, and again, drawing from my own experience using the 145 in West Africa, is on frequency. So high frequency is the only way that you can make that work. High frequency has to lead to high yields, and high yields are what you're going to have to draw. They've not been able to really draw enough of a high yield there, which means they've got to go back to competing on unit costs. The benefit they have, obviously, is right now this is the low season in South Africa. So Global through Lyft, this aircraft, Golf Alpha Charlie, was flying for Lyft until 2 days before it had the Mbuji stickers put on it. And, now it's flying for them. It makes sense. It fills in for what is a good season for Zimbabwean tourism. Big Falls and stuff. It's a good time of year to go there. And while on the flip side, it allows them to offer a very attractive rate relative to just flying or parking the plane on the South African. Those economics will change significantly when it comes to the IATA winter season, the southern summer season, which is now South African domestic peak. And obviously, that's why this ends in 2 months' time, because Lyft will need those planes back to make their winter schedule. I think that if this is successful, remember, Fastjet is not just Fastjet. It's part of Solenta Group, which includes Federal Air, Solenta, Fastjet Mozambique, a whole range of different AOCs and airlines within the group. I don't think it'll be very difficult for them to bring in an aircraft into Solenta's AOC, given Solenta's technical expertise and so forth, to bring in a 320 type. And I could actually see, in a wider perspective, Solenta, Federal Air, etc., looking at marketing an ACMI 320 product to Fastjet as well as to other other operators within Africa. Right now, that's a niche that Global has, but I wouldn't be surprised if Solenta is looking at that and saying, hey, there may be a market for some of this if we go and get A320s or 73s or small narrow bodies like that. So I think it's a very logical tester, both for Fastjet as well as for the parent group in terms of where it goes. And from Global and Lyft's perspective, perfect timing. It allows them to place an aircraft and probably make more money on it than they would have flying it on domestic routes in South Africa.
Yeah, really, really smart play. It looks like a good opportunity for sure. Anything you want to add on this, Behramjee, or have we covered it? All right, cool. Right, well, I will come back to you, Sean, because I think the next one's one for you as well, which is all about FlySafair. So they obviously were told, from the Competition Commission that you've got to work out what's going on with the shareholding. The sale to Harith has been approved by the Competition Commission. So where do we stand now, and what is the next hurdle, and when can we expect this to be sort of concluded, and what does it all mean for the airline, I suppose?
Well, for the airline, it pretty much doesn't mean much because it's business as usual and they're operating exactly as they have been, and they will continue to operate the same way when the shareholding changes. So no real change operationally from the airline perspective. The interesting thing, though, is, South Africa has an interesting system on the competition side where they've got two bodies. They've got the Competition Commission, which is effectively the regulatory body that does investigations and makes recommendations and things. But they also have the Competition Tribunal, which is the judicial body. And so when the CompCon will do a review of everything and then make a recommendation to the tribunal, who will then give it a legal stamp of, right, this is good to go. ComCom has reviewed, approved with conditions. I think the primary condition has been that obviously because Harith owns Lanseria Airport right now, where as of right now, but that will change in our next line item, where right now Safair is the only scheduled airline tenant, that they must make access to Lanseria available to other airlines on the same or more favorable terms than they're offering FlySafair. So they can't just say, right, Safair, you can have all this for free or for R1 each, while everybody else got to pay 10,000. No. So they've got to offer equal things, and that is the condition that ComCom has put. It's a reasonable condition. Competition Tribunal will take it. The only potential hiccup that may occur between now and then is that Harith and Lanseria Airport are under significant scrutiny in a completely unrelated fraud case. And this is more and more details of that are beginning to come out. And again, this is one of the very South African state capture fraud kind of things, which could have the result of putting Harith in a position where they are no longer going to get an easy approval from the tribunal. So I'd say that is probably the only flag in this from a pure business perspective, assuming Harith has raised the cash, is able to satisfy the warranties that they're making, for the acquisition, that it will not involve PIC funding, etc., etc. That should all go just fine. But this little hiccup in terms of this fraud case involving shares at Lanseria Airport and their valuation, and basically a few R100 million between friends disappearing. That's the only potential hiccup there. But as it stands, it probably won't make a difference to FlySafair either way. But obviously, I think Safair wants to put that whole ownership issue behind them once and for all by closing the sale. If it doesn't go through, they will have to seek obviously a new buyer and or a new restructuring of their shareholding.
All right. Right. Let's stick with Lanseria, because we got a very exciting announcement yesterday, and that involves Airlink. So we're going to talk about Airlink now. We've got some E2 deliveries. I think one of those, even Sean told me, arrived this morning, which is super exciting. So their first, two-class E195 E2 is delivered in July. Second one, I think, came in this morning. But let's talk first about the new route, which is Lanseria to Harare from December. And also there are lots of filings for other routes as well as the new aircraft start to come in, some intra-African routes that are super interesting, that are either served or potentially unserved routes by other carriers, which is where Airlink loves those little niches. So we're seeing that post investment from Qatar. The Qatar investments come in. We've seen the aircraft, and now we're starting to see this. So Lanseria Harare, again, super excited to hear that a lot of this was actually first sort of really discussed in detail in 2025 at AviaDev, and then I'm sure followed up with, because we had both the Lanseria team and all of the senior team from Airlink with us at AviaDev in 2026, just a couple of months ago. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's just really nice to hear that obviously our platform is supporting this route development. I'm sorry about this, Behramjee, but Sean has been following this very closely. I'm going to let him go first again. You will get your chance, don't worry, because he is chomping at the bit. So, Sean.
Now, I think, this is something, I think we mentioned it last year at some point when they first applied for the rights between Lanseria and Zimbabwe. So I think they'd applied for both Harare and Bulawayo, and they were approved for both. They're going to start off with 3 weekly Harare. 15th of November will be the first flight. The flight will be an evening Harare, Lanseria. Aircraft will overnight in Lanseria, and then back Lanseria, Harare first thing in the morning. The way they are doing that is the aircraft that currently flies Cape Town, Harare, and overnights in Harare will just continue onward to Lanseria, and the crew and the aircraft will overnight there, and then it'll start again the next morning. It is 0 additional crew, 0 additional aircraft, 0 additional anything required to make this work. It's as low risk a play as you can get. I had a chance to chat with Catherine, with Namshla, with De Villiers, all of them yesterday on this, and I think they are very, very interested to see how this plays out. I think it is a bit of a risk for them. They're leaving their comfort zone of a Johannesburg and Cape Town hub kind of operation into a more point-to-point type thing. In the long run, I think it's logical because Lanseria potentially, as the 145s are being upgauged in many markets from Johannesburg and Cape Town, they have the ability to shift these to the secondary hub in northern Johannesburg in Lanseria. And I mean, Lanseria, I love the airport. I mean, I used to have an office there back in the day, so I'm a little partial towards it. But it's so much easier to get in and out of. And I mean, if you fly out of OR Tambo late evenings or mid mornings, it's hell. I mean, you could be stuck an hour plus in the security and immigration lines, while Lanseria, I've never had to wait longer than maybe 17 seconds at Lanseria to do anything. It's just such an easy airport to get in and out of, friendlier. Just, I don't know. It's nice. Not as easy to access by public transport. I mean, there's no how train into Lanseria like there's to OR Tambo and so forth. So it's got a sort of thing. But if you're up in the Four Ways area, where there is a huge Zimbabwean community, Four Ways, Randburg, things like that, those are where Zimbabweans are in large numbers. This becomes an attractive alternative option. And 3 times a week with the 190 as a tag on to effectively an aircraft that was already going to be sitting at Harare overnight. I mean, this is an absolute no-brainer thing to take. And I'm pretty sure that if this one is successful, you'll see Bulawayo probably come in behind that, and that would probably be a 145 rather than a 190 to start with. So that's the first thing in terms of that. Second one is they've taken delivery of 2 E2s since we had our last podcast. First one came in on 4th of July. Second one came in on the 4th of August today. So that was Lima Kilo Golf was the first one in July. That was their first 2-class aircraft. And that one has now been deployed into the network after about 3 weeks of entering service. Second one literally flew overnight. That's Lima Kilo Delta. Flew overnight from Sao Jose de Campos, arrived at 7:17 this morning into Johannesburg. And so that's number 5 of the E2s for Airlink that are here on the ground now, and that too will enter into service. And but before I forget, De Villiers said to please send him the links. I'm giving him a shout out here saying hi, De Villiers, because I'm going to send you the link after this as well. But yeah, finally with Airlink, the most recent Statscourant, the State Gazette, has listed Airlink application for 3 new routes. Johannesburg, Mauritius, which I think makes sense given that they've already announced Cape Town, Mauritius, and Johannesburg is a larger market for that. Cape Town, Nairobi, which I think is a fascinating route. It will be. I think this one actually, given the current situation with Nigeria from Cape Town, which obviously, we've discussed Cape Town, Nairobi way more than we should have. But, where that's given, I would actually say Cape Town, Nairobi has more potential right now than Cape Town, Lagos, given that traffic from Ghana and Nigeria, in particular South Africa, has fallen off a cliff in the last few months. And finally, Johannesburg to Kilimanjaro, which rises like Olympus above the Serengeti. Shout out to Toto. Yes, I think those are the 3 interesting routes. All of them are routes that are opened up because of the E2. There's something that the legacy EJet could not operate nonstop without significant restrictions before. So it's just an exciting, this is when they ordered the E2. This was the kind of stuff they're opening up. This is the reason it won our Best Commercial Decision of 2025 award as voted by our listeners. And I'm excited to see where this goes. I think they are as well. I think just having this new tool is just something that their entire team over there, every time I talk to them about it, they're always like, have you seen our new route? Have you seen this? And I'm like, yep, I have. I follow it almost as closely as you guys do, but I think it's great. And I think this is just more positive stuff from Airlink. And I know there's one particular listener here who loves sending me abuse saying that I love Airlink and I don't like black-owned South African Airways. I think that's a load of rubbish. I think South African Airways has proven that anything they touch turns to shit, while Airlink has the opposite ability to make lemonade out of lemons. So that's the reality of it. So yeah.
Yeah, really, really exciting with the new tools, like you say. And I'm sure if you're sitting there in the network team, you're going, wow, we've got these new abilities, these new things, which was all part of the consideration process in the first place, right? Of selecting it. Where can we go next? But it's still, they haven't jumped from the Embraer, 190 to a massive wide body, right? They've just said, right, we're going to the E2.
They're not releasing an A330 to fly Cape Town, London.
Not yet. We'll see. We'll see. Let's see on that one.
Although I will say this. Last night, the delivery flight, Airlink from Sao Jose de Campos to Joburg, and South African Airways is scheduled Sao Paulo to Joburg, literally flew wingtip to wingtip the entire night. And I just found that hilarious. I sent a screenshot to Namsha this morning saying, when are you applying for Brazil traffic rights? Because obviously the A330 and the E2 were both able to do nonstop from Brazil to Johannesburg. So it is possible. And I didn't get a very polite response to that. But anyway.
No, fair enough. So Behramjee, your thoughts on Airlink and these new routes they've talked about, so Cape Town, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Mauritius, Johannesburg and Kili. You think these all can make sense?
Cape Town, Nairobi definitely makes sense. That market can be easily stimulated. as well as you said, which other one? To Johannesburg to Mauritius, again, massive point-to-point demand, but that will also feed their domestic South Africa network as well as some regional routes. So it's not only a point-to-point play. Um, then, which was the third one? You said Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro, yes.
Kilimanjaro, yeah.
Yes, that for sure. We've seen how Zanzibar has been stimulated easily from South Africa over the last 2 years. So Kilimanjaro will not be as much stimulated, but definitely there will be a significant amount of stimulation going into that service. But again,
And just as a side to that, when I asked them how Zanzibar Mauritius are doing in pre-sales and things, they said pretty well. So they're pleased with how Zanzibar has performed so well as how Mauritius pre-sales are going.
Yes, Kilimanjaro will be vast majority will be South Africa point of sale and not Tanzania. It'll be basically safari tourists and the odd ethnic person who has some family nearby the Kilimanjaro area, but that I doubt will be a lot. It'll be mainly safari tourists going there, as well as those who might be doing open jaw, flying into South Africa on another airline, doing a safari there, as well as doing another safari in Tanzania using Airlink.
Yeah.
Potential interline opportunities with Qatar Airways. Don't they fly to Kilimanjaro? You could fly Johannesburg, Jaro, Doha.
They fly to Kilimanjaro, no?
Yeah, so you could interline over there. So if the Johannesburg Doha nonstop is full, you could go via Kilimanjaro to Doha.
Absolutely.
At the Kilimanjaro hub.
That's
Focus City.
Shout out to Aziz and the team at Kilimanjaro. They're always at AviaDev, always working hard to try and do what they can and doing well.
Just an FYI, if anybody listening wants a hotel recommendation for Kilimanjaro, I would recommend the Sarina Hotel, which is in Ngorongoro National Park. Very well trusted. Yeah. 5 stars.
Any good pizza restaurants around there, Behramjee?
No.
Okay, right. Thought that. All right, fair enough.
Are the waters warm or cold in Kilimanjaro, or is there water at all?
In the crater, there is most definitely.
Is it warm or cold water in the crater?
I didn't get out and check because I might have been eaten by something very big and
you just spent 4 hours in a Land Cruiser.
That is true. Bouncing around, getting an African massage, which is always a highlight. Right. Okay. We've still got a few to get through. We're way past our time, but who cares, right? Yes. So Namibia Air, let's talk about this. A national carrier mooted for our wonderful, beautiful country of Namibia. Applications for scheduled licenses. They're talking about an Embraer fleet. They've been quite public, of course, with what their plans are, not to compete on the European routes, but to compete regionally and domestically. Is it going to work this time? And when can we expect? They're talking about it being done and launched this side of the new year. And also there's talk about them partnering up with Botswana too. They're very close as countries and administrations. So what do we know here? Who wants to dive in on Namibia Air? Not Air Namibia, Namibia Air. I think Sean's put his
first of all, Namibia Air is Air Namibia under a different name. I mean, a dyslexic Air Namibia. Look, as a concept, I think, I'm generally opposed to governments having involvement in airlines. I make an exception where sometimes domestic and near regional connectivity needs to be provided, which is not being able to be provided by the private sector. At this point of time, Fly Namibia is operating domestic routes within Namibia, but it obviously has a monopoly, which is suboptimal. And there seems to be not a wide and growing network, because that is obviously not their primary focus either. So I can see why the government believes that there needs to be this. I think some of the rhetoric that comes out of the government in terms that you have to lower fares to a certain cap of like less than $100 to Ondango and things, those are not feasible. You simply cannot, because the cost of operating is too high and the market is too small. So even with
unless you're willing to subsidize, yeah.
Well, exactly. And that is where the problem comes in, where if you are subsidizing a competitor to a private airline, you are basically killing a private airline. And is that what they want to achieve? Well, they will say no, but the reality is secretly they're probably saying yes. They want to once again control the Namibian skies like they did with when Air Namibia was around, and again losing huge amounts of money in subsidy. Although to be fair, most of their losses came, in fact, almost all their losses came on that bloody Frankfurt route. So staying out of that's a good point. But also, let's look at the fact that Namibia is not well connected, not because people think that Namibia is a bad place, but because Namibia is a tiny country in terms of population and economy. Namibia is not somewhere that you're going to be able to fly 3 times daily from anywhere other than Johannesburg and Cape Town. That is the reality of it. So when you're talking about a fleet of Embraer 170s to connect Durban and Harare and Lusaka and Lilongwe and wherever else you pick, the market is starting from nearly zero in most of these places. And I'm not really sure that you are going to be able to do this without significant subsidies, which they are not willing, or at least they claim not being willing to put in. So, yeah. Now, the whole Namibia-Botswana joint national airline thing is a bloody joke. Forget it. I mean, there's no way in hell that either side is going to give up. The reason they're getting back into this game is because they want to have control, and they're not going to surrender control to their neighbors. So no matter how well and how close they are, that's not going to happen. So that's it. One discussion which has had a bit of legs, and I know that they've had these brief conversations, is maybe handing over management to Ethiopian. But if they hand over management to Ethiopian, they're not going to deliver on this business plan. They're going to bring in Dash 8s and they're going to bring in 737s. And, it's maybe the Ethiopian
ATRs. They've got some ATRs, right?
Well, they've got the ATRs because they didn't have Dash 8s.
Congo.
Yeah, exactly, in Congo. So the ATRs were purely a stopgap. I could see 737 MAX 7s going into Congo, by the way, as well. And that's another reason why I say that 40 to 50 units for Ethiopian, and that would not be a surprise, spread out over the different subsidiaries. But yeah, so where we were in that case, I think it's a wait and see.
It's a wait and see.
The concept is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with them looking to provide a public service utility to unserved markets over there. I think their eyes are slightly bigger than the necessity is right now. And that is because, you can't put forward a business case and say we're going to set up a subsidized public service utility as a commercial venture. It's not a commercial venture if it's a subsidized public service utility. So to try and make it commercial, you go and pad up your numbers saying we will stimulate 800% the market between Durban and Windhoek. So yeah, 800% means 2 people now becomes 18 people. And, that's still not going to be enough to make money.
And how much of the strategy is trying to get people who are coming into Namibia on a leisure trip, then using that as their connection to another part of Africa? Because it doesn't feel like that's a big part of this, and not necessarily.
But it's not.
The guys who are providing that feed.
The people who are coming into places like that are coming into hubs. They're coming into places with existing large varieties of long-haul service. Namibia has service from Germany. Okay, maybe Germany and satellite Germany, so Switzerland, things like that. But it's Germany. There's bloody Germans who come into Namibia and nobody else. I mean, genuinely. I was going to say, you walk around Windhoek, all you hear is German, but that is true because they also speak German and they teach in German. So, yeah, it is German. So as far as that goes, though, it's Germany. The rest of the world, if you want to do it, they come via Cape Town. They come via Johannesburg. They come via everywhere else. So you're not going to change Windhoek. Windhoek is no Cape Town and Windhoek is no that. They come via Addis, but that is, as a regional hub, as a regional launching pad, Addis is not it. People are not flying Windhoek to Vic Falls via Addis, although I'm sure somebody has. If you look at the DDS number, someone I'm sure has done that. But yeah, you can't compete with Cape Town and Johannesburg. You need to complement. You need to serve your home market first. And I think that is the only true justification, is they want to have better domestic connectivity within Namibia. Great. Go connect Swakopmund, Ondangwa, or what's it called? Ondiba, Toivo, I think it's been renamed now. Katima Mulilo, all these places, those are... Well, Valdez Windhoek you can drive. I mean, that's not necessarily something you need to have a flight. But so effectively that is where the connectivity needs to be properly served and not...
And I suppose here it's like, where does it leave Fly Namibia, right? Because they're going to kind of get cut out or killed through subsidization of the other carrier. And would there ever be a conversation where they said, look, open your books, show me your costs, right? This is why you can't have $100 to Ondagwa because you only got 4 passengers a day, right? How do we work together where we can say, right, we understand your cost per passenger is this, we do the subsidization, or there just isn't a will to work together? Or do you feel that that's just completely unfeasible, and in the short term they're going to compete and then one will drop out and we know which one that's most likely to be, which is the private airline that doesn't have the ability to subsidize?
There's mistrust. I think that is pretty clear. Neither side is going to trust the other one to have their best interests in mind, and I don't think it may lead to Fly Namibia pulling out of some of the less profitable markets if that kind of subsidy comes in. But remember, Fly Namibia is Westair, and Westair has been around doing bespoke, smaller scale charters, MRO services, and things like that since
they'll be wet leasing. They've been doing wet leasing, right? ACMI
exactly.
Now.
So they'll partner further with Airlink. They'll figure out a way to redeploy the capacity. So I think they've got a good team over there. Someone like Nareen, I can't believe they've not looked at this already. Hi, Nareen, if you're listening to this, they'll figure it out. You've got to evolve, and that's the truth of operation anyway. You can't just say this is my business model, I'm going to stick to it and double down when it's not working. If it's not working, you go to Plan B or C or D or whatever.
And obviously, there's been a period of time where Fly Namibia was, has been the carrier since Air Namibia went under, right? There hasn't been the other carrier in the market.
Westair was competing with Air Namibia as well prior to that. So, as I said, a lot of people forget that Fly Namibia is Westair. So, I mean, they've got a history of competing and competing successfully, and, potentially the other way around as well. So I don't say that it's going to be a slam dunk. People have a mistrust of the government-owned airline for good reason, because the government-owned airline did fail. So will Westair or Fly Namibia do well? We'll see.
I find it absolutely fascinating. I want to, really, really interested to know more about this. And obviously they've got the whole Air Connect Namibia project, which has to look at the holistic connectivity of Namibia as well. And how does this play a part? So let's see. Right, Behramjee, let me come back to you. Sorry, we've been ignoring you somewhat because we've been down in the south, and now I want to get back to, your hometown and your homeland. So ASKY, you love ASKY.
Yes.
Generally you're quite excited about this. So let's talk about what they've done. Kano via Niamey from tomorrow, I think it is, on the back of some new MAX 8 deliveries. So we just talked about Airlink saying, right, they've got these new aircraft in the fleet. Let's now do something cool with them. And obviously this has been planned for a long time because it's a very professionally run airline. So talk to us about what ASKY are doing. And again, shout out to Date and to Asias if they are tuning in today.
Yes. So the updates from ASKY are that they received 2 incremental 737 MAX 8s last month in July. And there's still one more 738 MAX, which is being repaired due to the Niamey airport shooting incident. So when that comes back into play, they'll have 3 incremental MAX 8s operating in their fleet. So for the timing, they've announced some network expansion details, which are as follows. They've increased Yaoundé to a daily flight from 5 weekly. The incremental 2 weekly flights are going onwards to Bangui from Yaoundé. Douala has been increased from a daily product to 9 times a week, with the incremental 2 weekly flights being flown via Malabo. Bamako Conakry has been increased from 4 weekly to a daily product. And I feel that is also done on purpose to hurt any momentum the Air Peace would be getting from the new Bamako-Conakry route. To be honest with you, I do not foresee Air Peace succeeding with Bamako-Conakry, as the demand from Nigeria to these 2 cities is not that high at all. And they're
Noel, if you're listening, this is Behramjee saying this, not me. If you're just listening, that's Behramjee saying it, not me. So don't say I'm the negative one.
The Fifth Freedom traffic between Bamako and Conakry is decent, but ASKY with their incremental frequencies now will make life very tough for them. The other route that has been increased, as John mentioned, they're starting new flights to Kanu via Niamey, which basically is for the reason why they chose Niamey to Kanu. There is some traffic between the 2 cities. Basically, northern traders, Muslim traders between the 2 cities fly back and forth. That's 3 times a week using a 738. And one thing which they've increased more which is probably their most frequent destination, and one of the most profitable routes is Dakar. Dakar has been increased to a double daily operation. Dakar is one of the biggest network feeders, not only to Central Africa, but even to other cities via Lomé to West Africa. They get a lot of feed from Dakar. Their point-to-point market is not so big, but is increasing steadily. But Dakar and Abidjan and Bamako provide massive feed to their network via Lomé. So but apart from this good news, there is some little bit of bad news also at ASKY internally, in the sense that a lot of their pilots over the last 2 months have been poached by Nigerian carriers due to offering better salaries and better packages. So they have had around, I was told, 8 to 9 pilots have left ASKY to work for Nigerian carriers since May. So that has a bit of an effect on their crew rosters. But ASKY, those pilots must have had their own reasons for leaving, but I would have probably not left ASKY for those Nigerian carriers, because at least ASKY, you have better staff
Says the
travel
man who's
benefits.
worked for Nigerian carriers before.
Yeah.
Says Mr.
At
Mr.
least-
Mercenary himself.
Yeah, the long-term stability is better at ASKY.
That should be his new nickname, the spreadsheet for hire, Sean, I think.
No, and
now-
just an interesting point,
Yeah.
I'll add on this with ASKY, because Esaias had an interview just, when was it? In the last week or so, where he's made comments about, obviously, stuff we already knew, stuff that Marshall had mentioned at AviaDev, in terms that they're not going to be looking, obviously, at Paris for 26. They're looking at Paris in 27. They're looking at 787s as a potential wide-body option. But effectively, and hi, Esaias, I know you're going to be listening to this on the weekend when you tend to listen to the podcast, so hello to you, Esaias, as well. Yeah, so it just basically solidified stuff which we picked up in bits and pieces here and there. This one was with the Addis report, I think, from Ethiopia, where they interviewed both Esaias and Marshall and basically had this information. So I think that's basically, as you say, the ASKY has a longer-term plan rather than just more of the same. They are looking at Europe and they are looking at wide bodies, but not in immediate time. We're looking at about a 2-year window for those.
All right, cool. Right, let's get through these last few. Some are quite short, I think. This first one, Air Côte d'Ivoire has cut Johannesburg before it actually launched, so it dropped it before it actually started.
Exactly. This is one of those, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, did it even fall? And that's exactly what Air Côte d'Ivoire is. Their Beirut was, it didn't even launch. Does it actually count as a cancellation then? Johannesburg, it didn't launch. Did it actually count as a cancellation then? And I think, just to say on this point, it was a bad idea to begin with. It was a horrendously poor idea to begin with. But I think this is definitely something which has come out, again, out of the cratering of the Nigeria to South Africa. I mean, that traffic has, when you look at where it was at its peak and where it is today, it is gone. It's gone to hell and back. So yeah, I think, it was a bad idea, and it was a bad idea made even worse. And thankfully for them, this has probably opened their eyes to, wow, we're going to lose even more than we thought we might. So yeah, that's not happening now. Thank goodness for that. But they still have an A330, which they don't know what to do with. Rumor is that they are trying to get Fifth Freedom rights to fly Accra to Paris. We shall see if that transpires from the Ghanaian and the French sides.
Absolutely. Right. Back to you, Behramjee, for this one. Air Congo launching Brussels and adding the Charles de Gaulle tag as well. Yeah. So talk to us about this one.
Well, it's very simple. I said this very clearly in the podcast last time around when the initial announcement of Brussels was made by them, that there is no way that they'll be able to sustain Brussels by itself, especially in the initial phase. And in order for them to have a decent load factor, they needed to tag Paris with Brussels, which thankfully they decided to do so going forward. They've not announced the exact launch date of Paris as yet, but that should happen soon. Right now, what is the July performance on the Brussels route was obviously not good at all, mainly due to these Ebola restrictions and also fear of passengers flying there from Europe. But as I mentioned this before, though I don't recall when it was, but now Paris, despite Congo being the DRC being a Belgian colonial country in the past, the demand for Paris point to point has now exceeded Brussels. In the last year, Paris to Kinshasa was 166,000 passengers, paying $710 one way, compared to Brussels, Kinshasa being 139,000 passengers, paying $685 one way. So it makes perfect sense for Air Congo to operate the tag to Paris. That will definitely help their load factors increase a bit. But I was also informed recently that Kinshasa Airport, just like Lagos, unfortunately does not allow transit passengers. So if you wanted to fly, for example, to Johannesburg via Kinshasa to Europe, you're not allowed to do so. So I would suggest to the Ethiopian Air Congo team to lobby hard and get this hurdle sorted out fast, because they need that feed from their regional network to feed Brussels, Paris, and Dubai in the future for that airline to be successful on the long haul front at least. Because relying on point to point demand is not going to cut the mustard.
No. Yeah, fascinating. Right, okay. Let's bring in the next one, and then you can reflect on all of those, Sean. So CAA Congo launches Luanda again. Did they? That's the question.
Behramjee, did it actually launch?
I've not even bothered to check, nor am I interested.
And I think that is the reality. CAA Congo is chop and change. What they do today may not be what they do tomorrow.
But
and
regardless,
if it launched, congratulations to them. If it didn't launch, well, next time.
Even if it did launch, there's hardly any market from Angola to Kinshasa point to point, which is their main focus. So even if they launch, it'll be suspended within a week or two. So there's no point even bothering to talk about it.
All right, fantastic. Right,
Fly CA should just continue doing what they do best, which is concentrate on domestic Congo, and that's it.
Absolutely.
Which is an amazing market. I always use it as an example that they use a 330 to fly a domestic route.
Not anymore, though.
It's still miles. Oh, do they not?
The 330 is AOG, isn't it? Yeah, it's AOG. So I sent you a picture of it last year when I was in Lubumbashi, and it's sitting with the engine open in Lubumbashi.
Okay, well, that makes me sad, but they did do it, and when people realize then the scale of that country, it's just incredible. And the alternative, I always say, what's the alternative to the flight is 4 to 6 weeks by road if you ever made it at all, right?
Or by river. Because the reason why airlines can do well in Congo is because of the geographical landscape of the country.
And if you read the Heart of Darkness, which was the book that was based Apocalypse Now was based on, really interesting, but set in the Congo. Okay. So it's good reading, bit old school now, but I quite enjoyed that. Right, we're coming to the end, and you can probably tell now. I've got this with me because the wonderful Air Seychelles team, Sandy and Charles, ordered one of these A321XLRs. Two from SMBC. So shout out to Ellen and to Cora and the team at SMBC as well, on dry lease at Farnborough. So another Farnborough. We should have maybe put this in early doors. Sorry to the guys for you being right at the end. But they're going to deliver these 2028, I think. So it's long haul access, narrow body economics. It's an island destination that it makes sense for some of their routes, I think. But how do you see it being deployed? Do you want to kick us off, Sean, on this one?
I think Seychelles has realized during the pandemic, in particular, not pandemic, the current Middle East crisis, that similar to Mauritius, they were overly dependent on connections through the Middle East. They had to develop capacity to be able to hit some of their core source markets directly. And while a wide body has been tried and failed in the past, this became a realistic option for it. It's something they've been looking at for a while. They've had tenders out for consulting services for evaluation of various things. But the honest thing is there's no real surprise, because there's only one aircraft that can really do this, which isn't a wide body and still has the ability to hit Europe from Seychelles, and that is the 321XLR. Now, it may not be able to hit the Londons and Parises without a payload hit. I mean, that may just be a bit on the edge. But Indigo is going to be launching Mumbai Amsterdam with the 321 XLR. I don't see any reason why you can't do, Seychelles to a big chunk of Europe with the 321 XLR. Plus, it opens up other potential markets for them. China, it can open up more in India. It can open up, well, if they really care to, a lot of Africa. It can open up potentially even Perth in Australia. So, choices are there. Let's see how they deploy it. But it's a good aircraft to have. I think Seychelles is the kind of market where this kind of long, thin route options are critical to them, especially because they've identified their vulnerability to Middle Eastern shocks.
But also, Sean, the XLR on Bombay Amsterdam will have a significant payload restriction. Significant.
Yeah, it will. Well, I won't say significant, but there will be a payload restriction.
No, the Indigo engineer told me himself. He said it will be a
what
very,
do you
very
consider
significant.
You're talking about 25 seats.
No, he said more.
John, I think you're muted if you're saying anything.
I was going to say, give us a percentage. Give us a percentage.
Yeah, he didn't want to. I'll do the numbers. I will do the numbers. I'll do the numbers, and I'll see what I come up with on this. But yeah, there will be about at least 25 seats on a hit over there. But you know what? If for Amsterdam slots, you keep it. But again, from Seychelles, it's a different performance issue.
They're doing it mainly for the slots.
Yeah, but the challenge is inbound to Seychelles. Your challenge is you've got long alternates. So it's not as much necessarily even departing from Seychelles, but it's coming back into Seychelles. You're having to carry an hour or two of extra fuel. And that is a huge amount of capacity, which you're then taking off the table because of that extra fuel you're carrying inbound to an island. So that's always a challenge. Mauritius doesn't have it as much because they've got Réunion right next door. So, it's less of a reserve thing, but, I've done flight planning into Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles and places like this. And Seychelles is one of the hardest because there's only 2 airports over there and one of them can't take a 321.
All right. Well, we're talking about Reunion. That's our final topic, which is Indigo cutting Chennai Reunion, which was only launched 29th of April. And they're pivoting to Mumbai, Dar es Salaam. So, yeah, India, Africa, we've talked about this as a really interesting market, especially East Africa with the narrow bodies and things. So, yeah, what's the story here? How bad was it? And why did it happen in the first place, I suppose?
It's a route that Air Austral used to fly for many, many years. I think there was definitely tour operator interest to revive it, and I'm sure that there was tour operator guarantees given to Indigo to launch this. It just didn't pan out as well as they thought it would. So they pulled the plug, and the guarantees probably expired. So I don't think it's necessarily a failure. It was an experiment that both sides felt we probably needed to take. And when it didn't pan out, and move on to plan B. The key, though, and this is something that I have said for years and years and years, that Indigo needs to bloody well start Mumbai Dar es Salaam. That is a market they could fly with the existing fleet. It is a market that has been ripe for the taking, and it is the market where Air Tanzania, through no credit of their own, has stumbled into a de facto monopoly and market leadership. And there is no market in the world where Air Tanzania deserves to be the de facto market leader for any reason whatsoever. So that will come to an end by all accounts, although this isn't yet officially announced. We have it from very reliable sources from multiple reliable sources that this will launch 20th of November. Daily Mumbai Dar es Salaam Indigo with 320 or 321 Neo, probably 320 Neo to start with the ability to surge it. And it's a huge market. It is a market that, similar to Nairobi, Indigo will go from zero to market leader in less than a year. And that's basically what's going to happen. Cool. And it should have happened 2 years ago.
Cool. Anything to add, Behramjee?
Yes. Just to correct Sean on one thing, the market that Sean and I have been lobbying for was not Dar es Salaam to Mumbai, but it was Lusaka to Mumbai for the last 2 years.
Lusaka to Mumbai needs an XLR. That's a separate story. I'm saying Dar es Salaam was doable with the existing fleet. So they should have opened Dar 2 years ago. When the XLR comes in, certainly, and they have spare XLRs, but remember, this XLR is in a different story right now because of their mess with the Norse thing. So let's leave the XLRs out of it. Existing fleet, Dar es Salaam could have been opened 2 years ago, could have been opened before Nairobi. In fact, it should have been opened before Nairobi because it's a better market because the competition is weaker. Nairobi at the time was larger, but had Kenya Airways and had Air India in it. They've driven out Air India. They forced KQ to consolidate down to, I think, 10 or 11 a week now, on 737s rather than wide bodies daily. So, Indigo has shown they will eat this market for lunch. They will stimulate. There will be so much good stuff happening for them. And I know you are the one who's been saying they should add Zanzibar to it, but no, Dar es Salaam is it's the second most boring city in Africa, but it is still, a large source of people, if only because they need to get out of there to have fun.
Tell us what you really think, Sean, right?
Which is the first most boring city in Africa?
Lilongwe, but that's a whole other story as well.
Oh, he actually admitted it. Unbelievable.
I hate Lilongwe. There's a reason I live in Blantyre, not Lilongwe. Lilongwe is
All right. I think we've got to call it a day.
Wait.
Behramjee's about to get kicked out. I could see that, Behramjee.
No. So to add to what Sean was saying, the Tanzania-India market last year grew quite a bit. It's now 136,000 passengers versus 112,000 the previous year, out of which Mumbai alone was 81,000 passengers point to point.
Exactly. And Mumbai to Dar is most of it.
Yes. So, like what Indigo did out of Nairobi, they will get a huge chunk of domestic India feeding into Dar es Salaam, especially from Delhi. They will also get some passengers going to Zanzibar via Dar es Salaam, connecting with Air Tanzania on a separate ticket, but not so many as one would expect.
They will have nobody doing that. They will have nobody doing that. Don't worry.
Unless they do a triangle, which I doubt they do, because Indigo doesn't do triangles that much, except with their Bali flight they did. But that was for refueling purposes. But yes, definitely, I agree with Sean. Dar es Salaam, Bombay will definitely see very high load factors from the onset. Now, the key thing is when they will announce it for sale, because 20th of November means they should announce it they should put it up for sale by August 20th.
Baba, Willie Walsh started his job yesterday. Give him a few days before he announces his first route.
He's already doing stuff. He got rid of the Norse's.
That was before he came in. So he only started yesterday.
But as I've mentioned many times before, Sean is also the routes that Indigo need to look at are Lusaka with the XLR, as well as Taipei and Manila with the XLR.
I love the Lusaka mention because, of course, that is where AviaDev will be next year. We would have said Kinshasa and Lubumbashi also, but right now with the current Ebola crisis, that's not going to happen for quite some time.
But let's also keep this in mind. Now that Harare Gatwick is being served, the number one unserved route to and from Africa once again becomes Johannesburg to Mumbai. So
Kinshasa to
Airbus
Dubai
has been pushing the possibility of Mumbai, Johannesburg, Durban triangle. Kinshasa to Dubai has fallen off a cliff in 26. 26 numbers. Look at what your 26 numbers end of the year is going to be. You can't even travel from Kinshasa to Dubai. Dubai has blocked Congo if you're coming from Congo.
That is a ad hoc consequence because of Ebola.
It's not an ad hoc consequence. For the last 4 months, 0 people have been able to fly it. So that means you will not be the top route for 26.
Forget 27.
Impossible.
For
Pure
2025,
mathematics.
For 2025, the actual biggest number one route was Kinshasa to Dubai, not Harare to London.
But it's not happening for 26. We're talking 26.
Obviously not 26 because of special circumstances.
It's not a special circumstance. You think Ebola is a special circumstance in Congo? I mean, you've not looked at the history of Congo. There's like Ebola every second year.
Right. I'm calling it a day. I'm calling it, Behramjee, because somebody needs your boardroom back, right? Okay. So
No, I'm in my own office right now.
Oh, really? Okay. Good. Oh, lucky you. Right. So that brings us to the end of this month's connectivity update. It has been a bumper edition over 2 hours. So thank you for sticking with us. As always, more route launches than any planner should attempt. Loads of really interesting conversations, some good ideas for what we can talk about in coming episodes as well. So Jon Behramjee, thank you so much for being with us and being with me. Is such a highlight of the month. I love to spend the time with you guys. To everybody listening, I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do make sure you subscribe, make sure you share it with somebody, tell somebody about it. And we'll see you next month for another roundup. We don't know what date yet, but we'll work on that. And we've got some exciting news coming.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, and hopefully 1st of September will be the day that we will launch everything for AviaDev 2027. So a new theme, a new brand, a new website. So we're working on that in August while we have the podcast on the go slow. But thank you so much for your contribution, your attention, and we'll see you for the next episode very soon. Until then, safe travels. Keep an eye on the skies over Africa. This has been AviaDev Inside Africa. I've been your host, Jon Howell. Thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.